Today you will be doing core bite number 33. Number 1 says to find the unit rate of 12 pages in 3 days. Your hint is this definition of unit rate. So I want you to pause the video and copy down that definition. Now that you've copied down that definition, you should know that a unit rate is a ratio that compares something to 1. So in this problem, we need to determine the number of pages in 1 day. Pause your video and write that down. Keeping in mind that if we need to determine the number of pages in 1 day, I want you to look at these two numbers and decide for yourself what operation we would do. Pause your video, solve this, and answer number 1. The correct answer, the unit rate for 12 pages in 3 days, is 4 pages in 1 day. That is the unit rate. If a unit rate is telling the number of pages in 1 day, then you should have divided, but 12 divided by 3 is 4. The correct answer is 4 pages in 1 day. Number 2, I am not giving you any hint because we have already covered operations with decimals. So you will have 3 different answers. One reminder, when you are adding or subtracting decimals, you line up the decimals and then add and subtract. So pause your video and answer all 3 parts A, B, and C to this problem. Okay, for A, 24 and 7/10 plus 19 and 3/10, you should have 44 as your answer, or 44.0. Now, if you did not get 44, then you need to, at the bottom of your paper or wherever you have some blank space, you need to rework this problem with me. You should have lined up your 2 decimals, 24 and 7/10 plus 19 and 3/10. And then when you line up your decimals and add, you end up with 44, and you bring your decimal straight down. So 44.0. Correct that if you missed it. For part B, your answer should have been 27 and 7/10. If you did not get that, I need you to show your work and find your mistake. Now for letter B, you are adding 14, which is a whole number, and 13 and 7/10. If you do not see that decimal in that whole number, remember it is at the end. Then you should have lined up your 2 decimals. We're adding, and remember you would add a 0 in that space. So pause your video if you missed that part and rework this problem. After you added 14.0 and 13.7, again, you would end up with 27 and 7/10. And finally, the third answer for number 2, 18 and 4/10 minus 3 is 15 and 4/10. If you missed that one, again, you're going to rework it. We have another whole number, and I don't see that decimal, so it is at the end. So you should have solved your problem like this. If you missed it, find your mistake. Number 3, you're given another ratio problem. You should not need a hint for this. So if you will pause your video and answer that question. For number 3, the question was, what is the ratio of loaves to flour? So notice that loaves is mentioned first, and if you read the problem, there are 4 loaves. So that number should be first in your ratio. Then there are 6 cups of flour. So because flour is mentioned last in the question, you would put 6 last in your ratio. Now notice that 4/6 is not one of those answer choices. That is because you need to simplify this ratio to 2 to 3. So the correct answer for C was 2 to 3. For every 2 loaves, you would use 3 cups of flour. That's what that ratio means. Number 4, you should not need a hint because we've done several like this. So pause your video and answer number 4. Now that you have answered number 4, check your answer and it should be a -2. It said write an integer, that's a positive or a negative number, to represent 2 miles below. That was your key word. That indicates a -2 instead of a +2. So a couple of reminders. Make sure you have the definition of unit rate. Make sure you have shown your work for all of your problems. And if you missed any, you need to make sure that you go back and find your mistake now that I have gone over the correct answers. It's your responsibility to know why you missed those. Once you have finished, you may put this away.